Hi, I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley, and we are here to celebrate the legacy and the life and the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As you know, uh, he has been a pioneer and the world, not just the United States, but the world as it goes um, toward civil rights, humanity, peace, justice, getting rid of prejudice, and etc. So I'm here to celebrate its life, and I want you guys to celebrate with me as well. Okay, first of all, hello. I'm excited about this show today. We're here to celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I got a panel here that's absolutely fantastic that's going to celebrate and give their perspective on this great man legacy and all of the things that he has changed, not just in the United States, but the world as it relate to civil rights, humanities, love, just coming together. Michelle, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh, this man has meant so much to so many people. And he wasn't just a champion for civil rights for African Americans. He was a champion for civil rights for everyone, everyone. So if you read about his history, you look at the footage of film, different peoples from all different walks of life, different ethnicities. He was a champion for everybody. So we're really excited about the show today, and we have titled it Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., The Legacy, the Man, His Vision.
Wow, I'm excited. So wherever you're watching this at, you can join in. Just like Michelle, get ready to introduce the panel. And we're going to dive deeply into this. And I hope everybody, wishing everybody a happy Martin Luther King birthday. Michelle, can you please tell our viewers and our listeners the title of the show, purpose of the show, and introduce this great, great panel that we have?
Well, yes. So we're having a discussion with the following panelists: financial consulting owner of Goldsmith Financial, Joshua Goldsmith; military veteran, television host, best-selling author, and transformational speaker, Dr. Stacey Bulluck; entrepreneur and United States Marine Corps veteran, Dr. Clement E. Johnson Jr., and management and business consultant, Tim Grant. And we're going to talk about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What does it mean to you? What did he mean to you? How do you apply in today's world, not just nationally, but internationally as well? So we've got so many questions. Like I said, we're just gonna have a conversation about this amazing, amazing civil rights leader, his vision, his legacy, the man. So let's start with you, Dr. Johnson. Can you recall your first exposure to Dr. King's speeches or writings, and how did that impact you? Oh, we can't hear you, Dr. Johnson.
Hey, Clem, you're on mute.
Thank you for having me on the show, Michelle and Dr. Cooley. And to answer your question, I'll dive right in. I'm a baby boomer. I was born in 1960. And I remember my first vision of Martin Luther King was the marches, and how Dr. King would march through the streets. And I'm bringing this from a 4 and 5 year old perspective. And I would listen to my parents. I would listen to them talk, and I would listen to the people in the neighborhood talk. At this particular time, this speech and these issues that Dr. Martin Luther King was elevating throughout the United States was purely a Black issue. I remember when Martin Luther King was assassinated, and I remember the grief that went through with the Kennedy assassination, with the Martin Luther King assassination. And I remember through growing up how the conversation changed. And it was such a beautiful thing seeing the Dr. Martin Luther King message change, the Malcolm X message change, the Elijah Muhammad message change, the Julio Cesar Chavez message change, and John F. Kennedy and other messages change, all based on Martin Luther King and his legacy. That's my initial understanding of Martin Luther King from a young age.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Josh Goldsmith, what key messages or ideas from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. resonated most with you personally, and why?
Great question, Michelle. Thanks for having me on the show. Boy, there's so many messages that he had, and that live to this day that are just so relevant in today's political, socioeconomic climate, what's going on in the world today. A big message that just glaring is his drive to have everybody recognize equality. The civil rights movement it's just so powerful. My daughter was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Every year on this day, I would take her to the Barnes and Noble or Borders bookstore, and we'd dive right into all the speeches. I think she got exposed at a very young age, but it's important to teach our kids too, and to pass on his legacy, because his legacy lives in our hearts.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Doc. Josh, Dr. Stacey Bulluck, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show. So, Dr. King, his teachings, how did they inspire you, or have they inspired you to become involved in any social or civil rights, activism?
Wow. When you asked that question that way, it directed my mind to service. And that's one of the things of a clarion cry, if you would, that because we are able to celebrate his birthday, that they have now deemed this as a day of service, which I kind of have some mixed emotions on that, because I believe that the goal and how it impacted me was that we all begin to do our part. This is what I gathered from his life, is that he was doing his part. He answered the call for him. And so he has inspired me to continue to answer the call for my life and provide love as the predominant driving force of me serving other people.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bulluck. Tim Grant, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Michelle?
I am doing great. So, Dr. King's vision of equality and justice, did it influence you and your own beliefs and values? Did they kind of shift, or was it sort of an awakening within you? Can you kind of talk about that?
Sure. It was, 1968 when Dr. King was assassinated, and I came home from school, and my mom was watching the news and was very upset. And that was really, the first time that I got introduced to Dr. King, through my mom and what Dr. King was striving to do. And that's where I began to get my first, look at an understanding of what he'd been trying to do. And as you pointed out, Michelle, it was beyond. It certainly was in the moment, his efforts to end the legalized Southern system of poverty and segregation. But as you pointed out, really it was the message was much broader, to basic civil rights for all, basic voting rights, basic labor rights, and equality, and of course, using his platform as a pastor, right, in the way that he did best, as an orator. But I think what I got from my mom that day was, Dr. King's "I Have a Dream," but teaching us to how do you act on that dream, right? And what can we do? There were so many great quotes as I got to understand who he was and what he stood for as I got older.
Thank you, Tim. Dr. James Cooley, Dr. King, he was an educated man, and his legacy is reflected in, educational system. How has Dr. King's legacy, his vision, his works, how's it affected your own education? And I know you love education, but can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it affected everything about me, and not just education, but my mindset, my thought process, and most importantly, it gave me the understanding and desire that he did everything in his lifetime to bring people together. Whether they're black, white, green, gold, purple, religion didn't matter, and it affected me in that way as well, because that's what I believe that I'm here for, is to do all I can to bring people together, to help educate others, to show others that you can. And regardless of what anybody else might say or think about you, you have a purpose. And Dr. Martin Luther King was the epitome of that. And what he did was he if somebody slapped him or something like that, he turned the cheek. Because that's not going to civilize violence. You have to teach through your mind, through your, I would say, being you, showing, model that. And so I try to get a better understanding through his living and through his work to be a better person and try to help as many as possible.
One thing I loved about Dr. King is his peaceful protests. And as we know through history, some of them turned violent, not on his side, but just about how he was a man of peace, and he was human. I'm sure he was afraid at times, but he wanted to do what was right. He wanted to stand up for the people who nobody was standing up for. So I admire that so much about him. He was a young man, taken away too early in his prime, but he was a very peaceful man, and people today can learn a lot from him. But I do believe it's time for a break.
We're going to take a station break, but whichever platform that you're watching us on, whether you're watching us on your 360 television, Roku TV, over 45, 55 live streaming network, including Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. You want to be part of this great conversation, all you have to do is just go to the comments. Ask any question that you might have. I promise you we'll get you an answer. It's your life. We'll see you shortly after the break.
I never wanna leave. Yeah, I'm right where I wanna be. We got something you and me, and I can't get rid of this feeling. Just like a magnet, we're just like a magnet. The things we have can't be taken for granted. Now I know that it has always been you. I can't help it, I'm so drawn to you. Just like a magnet, we're just like a magnet. The things we have can't be taken for granted. Now I know that it has always been you. I can't help it, I'm so drawn to you. Hey, I'm so drawn to you. I'm so drawn to you. Yeah.
I've seen a smile convey I love you. I'm proud of who you are, and one that keeps us close when we're apart. Talking from the darkness of all that we've been through, it seems that there might be a way to leave behind live again. Life of
Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to the James Schooley Show. It's your life. And I tell you, we're celebrating the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, the legacy, the man, and his vision. And neither one of us, I believe, would be here today as free as we are, as joyful, and being able to just understand, communicate. This man gave his life that he would change or help change the world where everybody can live together on a planet, in an area, in a place with harmony. So before we go back into this, I want to play another little short, quick feature where I kind of did a little documentary of Dr. Martin Luther King. So here it is, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle. In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? When it comes to creating a beloved community, one that had captured the imagination and the hearts of all people of goodwill throughout the world, it was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose birthday we celebrate today, who created the lofty goal of eliminating poverty, hunger, homelessness, discrimination, bigotry, violence, and prejudice. He called on us to replace these with an all-exclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. Let's remember that he taught that nonviolence is a way of life for cursed people, that we would be wiser to win friendship and understanding with each other, and learn to disagree or agree upon your differences. So, Michelle, you ended last segment talking about a non-peaceful or peaceful demonstration, peaceful people just getting together, being peaceful, loving each other regardless of situational circumstances. Can you pick that up again?
I said that one of the things I admired about Dr. King was his approach to a peaceful protest. And, unfortunately, some of them became not peaceful, but predominantly on the other side. And, his vision was to, you may have differing ideas, differences of opinion, but you can express them peacefully. He didn't go there, with trying to attack or to physically intimidate the other side. And what we're seeing today is just these protests, and January 6th is a perfect example. You can protest something, but if it's not done peacefully, what is the point? Then it turns into something ugly and turns into something else that you did not mean it to be. So that's one thing I admire about Dr. King. One of many things is his approach to a peaceful protest. Going forward, leadership. Dr. King had the most amazing leadership, and he had different aspects of his leadership style. So we're going to start with you, Tim. What did you admire about Dr. King's leadership style, and how has it influenced your leadership style in life?
Well, I want to go back to that answer I gave earlier about how I got introduced to Martin Luther King about, in his death at 9 when I came home from school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was confusing for me because I wasn't raised to be prejudiced, right? But then on the other hand, I lived in a town where 98% of the people looked like me, right?
Mm-hmm.
There were 3 black families in Mission Viejo that I went to school with at that time, right? And so this was a foreign concept to me that, when my mom broke the news that, hey, not everybody shares that same view, right? And from a leadership perspective, I mean, Dr. King sought out, he absolutely sought out interracial cooperation in his efforts, right? And I remember thinking, well, how does this have anything to do with me? Because, I'm friends with with the black kids that I go to school with. I mean, I never thought about, the whole difference in the difference in number, right? And what it felt like to be, somebody that wasn't in the 98%. But I think that, the example, that he set, and as you pointed out, drawing on, his nonviolent principles from Gandhi and, his spiritual tenets. I think the leadership style began, it's kind of hypocritical to be a person of faith and go to wherever you worship once a week, but then when you walk out the door, treat people differently than that, right? And, Dr. Martin Luther King, was famous for a number of things, but I mean, it's saying that, look, we either all have to figure out how to live as brothers and sisters, or we have to perish together as fools. And so immediately the hypocrisy of people that pretend to be practicing Christians or whatever faith they may believe, right? That its tenets did not involve, looking down at other people or discriminating or denying other people what you would expect and want for yourself, and treating each other as neighbors. That it became very obvious to me as I got older that, there was an hypocrisy there. People go to church one day, but the rest of the 6 days of the week, they don't practice that.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Dr. Clement Johnson, are there specific, Dr. King has, communicated many speeches. He's wrote many articles. What quotes, are there any specific quotes that Dr. King has communicated that, there's so many, that holds near and dear to your heart? And can you tell us why?
For the quotes, all of them. The "I Have a Dream" speech is definitely my favorite speech from Dr. Martin Luther King. But my most favorite thing that King brought to my community was the song "We Shall Overcome." This is a song when I was in elementary school that we sung after the national anthem in my elementary school, 66th Street School over in Los Angeles, right after the Watts riots. And this is something that elevated our community in order to take on Dr. Martin Luther King's nonviolent approach, and in order for us as young citizens to find our place in society. And for those that don't know the song, it sort of goes, "We shall overcome someday. And deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday." It's a beautiful song, and it's even more beautiful when you see 5, 6, and 7-year-olds sing it.
That is a beautiful song. I haven't thought about that song in a long time. That is a beautiful, beautiful song. Dr. Stacey Bulluck, when you look at the footage of those protests, the violent protests that were against Dr. King, it's peaceful demonstrations, you kind of look at it, not you, but I guess a person can look at it as, why don't you want change to happen? Why don't you want equality for everybody? You know, why do you want things to stay the same? Why do you want to hold on to hatred or feel superior and have another, let's say, group beneath you, and you believe that's the way it should be? Why, in your opinion, Dr. Bulluck, when Dr. King was doing all this, why do you feel that people did not want change? Stacey, I think you're on mute, Stacey, Dr. Bulluck.
The same reason, sorry about that, the same reason people don't want change today. It's not just change of cultures or ethnicities. People, humans in general, shy away from change because of the unknown. Nobody knows what's going to happen if we make this change. But the sad part is, if we don't make a change, nothing will happen. And that speaks to the point of people being complacent in where they are. I know what I know, and I believe what I believe, and that's it. And I don't need to stretch my imagination. I don't need to grow or develop or learn anything else about this world, this another culture. I'm in mine and I'm good. And so that just kind of stagnates the world if we continue to live in that mindset.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bulluck. Joshua, Dr. King's, you know, his response when someone was against him, not to go, you know, tit for tat, not say tit for tat, but just because you do this doesn't mean I have to do this. So he was a man of peace. How do you feel our young people today, Josh, can take that lesson that Dr. King has shown us and apply it to their lives instead of reacting and thinking that violence is the answer? Can you kind of discuss that, Josh?
Yeah, great question. You know, one of the things that comes to mind immediately is that he wasn't a reactor, and you're right in that. He's a proactive person. And if we think about where change is always affected, I mean, it's affected by living by example. And he is the epitome of living his life to what he would like to see in the world. Yes, he was a man of peace, but was there always peace around him? No. You know, there were, you know, somebody tried to actually assassinate him in 1958 by shoving a letter opener in his chest. He overcame that. You know, he moved on. He preached peace, and he wanted peace and equality for everybody. And that's really how the younger generations are going to have to, I mean, they don't have to do anything, right? I mean, it's up to us to teach them and to put it on the docket and say, look, these are the people that affected change in our history. You know, it's ridiculous sometimes on some of these people upstairs. And I'll lower my tone a little bit, but you know, some of these people that have made it to the mainstream media, that these influencers that I can't even believe that people are following them for the exact opposite of the morals and the types of ethics and life building skills that we want to pass on to our kids. It's the exact opposite. And why is that? You know, it's because we have to share it in a way that is received, and the real power is by example. And that's really how it's only going to be received by our youngsters.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Josh. I just want to say one thing before the break. Hate and prejudice, you're not born with it. It is taught.
Absolutely.
Wow. You know, this is such a great discussion, our audience. I see the numbers are blown up. You know, Michelle, you can see the numbers just like me. And wow, this is so important. Just so important of a day, Dr. Martin Luther King birthday. And just like I said, we're talking about the legacy, we're talking about the man, we're talking about his vision. And we all are part of this today. We're going to take a station break. But when we come back, we're going to pick it up and we're going to dive even deeper into the things that this young man, I can say young because he died very young, that he left an impression on the world. Want to be part of the conversation, whichever platform that you're watching this on, all you do is just go to the comments, ask any question that you might have. I promise you we'll get your answer. It's your life, and we'll see you shortly after break.
Really get a chance to know who you are. And once you know who you are, you truly know who you are, love who you are. Love who you are. You're a masterpiece. Love who you are. Love who you were born to be. Love me some me. That's what I'm talking about. When you leave high school, you gotta know today or tomorrow, or hopefully today, what your plans are. Hopefully, there is no bad decision unless there is no plan. Create, collaborate, commit with confidence. Commit with what? Commit with what? In everything that you do.
Dr. James J.C. Cooley from the United States of America, and I am here to just say, first of all, I'm so happy and honored to be honored to be in the Coffee Book 2023, Unified Brain Z and the other organizations. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this collection. Let's ask ourselves just one question. What are we actually doing for others to help, to lift up, to inspire others? What stops us from just wishing Dr. Martin Luther King a happy birthday instead of actually living his dream? That would truly be the candles on his birthday cake and bring lightness to our world and also to live out his purpose. Some of the things I want to share with you about Dr. Martin Luther King. First of all, he was born January the 15th, 1929. He was born as Michael Luther King Jr. and later changed his name to Martin Luther King Jr. His grandfather began a long line of pastors through the church, Ebenezer Baptist Community Church in Atlanta. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. attended a segregated public school where he graduated from high school at the age of 15. Wow. I thought it's important to share those little clips of tidbits in history of this great man. We got more as we navigate through this great panel interview. And I'd like to give a couple of shout outs out there. Mark E. Meineke, my great friend, is also a television host, podcast host. I miss you, Mark. I miss you. Thanks so much for watching. Dr. Pearl Pierce, that's my guy. Hey, thank you, sir. Thank you for watching, and the many others that are watching out there that we see. I don't want you to think that you go unnoticed. Michelle and I can see you, and thank you for supporting this, especially today with Martin Luther King. And all other viewers out there, if you want to be part of the conversation, all you got to do is just go to the platform that you're on. Ask any question that you might have. Promise you we'll get you an answer. I'll turn it back over to you, Michelle.
Yes, and thank you for those tidbits about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A lot of people don't know his birth name was actually Michael. So that's always good to know. I want to talk about a conversation that nobody knows what really happened when they were talking between Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Now, they were both had different ways of ideas on how to deal with certain issues at that time, but they did agree to have a meeting and discuss it. But nobody really was in the room when they had that discussion. So, there's, assumptions on what was being said. So, Dr. Bulluck, let's talk about that. So, when you hear about this, when you know the history of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his meeting with Malcolm X, and how even though they had different views on things, but they came together to discuss it. No one really knows what happened, but how is an example of that? How can people apply it to their lives regarding differences of opinion? What are your thoughts on that?
Great question. We so need this today because we are all so multifaceted. And as a former equal opportunity representative, it was always my thing to go into a mediation, a conversation, which you brought up that Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King had, and they decided to come together for a mutual reason. And regardless of anything else that they believed or, something that was within their scope of how they thought, that's how we should approach things today. Don't allow our differences of opinion on things to dictate when we come together for a common goal. We all, I believe, at least on this panel, I believe that we all want to be people who serve others. But we may not all think the same. We may not live the same. We live in different neighborhoods. We live in different states. Mm-hmm. So, different things affect us on a daily basis. However, today is a prime example. We came together to speak about a common goal, Dr. Martin Luther King, and how the legacy of his life. And we're the example right now.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Bulluck. Dr. Johnson, I'm going to ask you a different question. So, not even young people today, men and women, some forget that the rights we have today were fought for by people like Dr. King and people before him, and even people after him. Why do you feel that some of that has been forgotten or taken for granted? I'm going to ask you that question, Dr. Johnson.
I can't say that I agree with that, Michelle. I can say that most of the young people I talk to, and I talk to them all the time, mm-hmm. with inside of my community, and I've been, around the world, around the nation, and they all know. They all know Dr. Martin Luther King. They all know Malcolm X, and they all know where they fit in the diversity arena that Dr. Martin Luther King was preaching to the masses. I think the effect of what we see in our communities is how they affect it. Because most young people today, they grew up with the diversity, and with inside of their own young community, everybody is everybody. And they don't have the hangups that us older folks out here that have the realms in the political environment have now. What that equates to me is I think we're looking for a bright future ahead. There'll become a point in time in the next 15 years where there'll be a changing of the guard. And most of these young people, they understand that our major issues in our society today are not race. It's the global issues of global warming. It's how nations get along. It's what work is going to mean between AI and ML. That's what the younger community is focused on. Although today in our political environment, it may seem that it's morphed back to the time of the 40s and the 50s and early 60s. But sometimes you have to go backwards to morph forward quickly.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I want to piggyback on that. Now, I know you said you didn't agree with that statement, and I'm not saying everyone's like that. Not saying that. I would never make a general statement like that. It is not good. But do you believe there are a few, and I'll give you a perfect example, voting, your voting right to vote. There are people out there who still don't vote, but there are people who fought for us to have the right to vote and taking that for granted and what people before us went through to get us those rights. I'm saying just some need to be reminded, or they take that for granted. You see where I'm going with that?
I understand exactly where you're going. And for me, I put the focus on, because a lot of times the voting rights and in a political sphere, they're trying to take our voting rights away. That's not the issue. The issue is that the people are allowed to vote. A lot of those don't exercise their privilege to vote. And that is what you're saying. And that piece I do agree with. How we can affect that change when we bring those conversations up. When you talk to your kids, when you talk to their grandkids, and when they talk to their friends, we need to put out there the emphasis on, first you have to register before you can even think about voting in the first place.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Joshua Goldsmith and Tim, this question is for both of you. It's the same question. Basically, Dr. King's influence, within the United States, but how do you feel his influence, his legacy, his vision influence others outside the United States? And we'll start with Joshua, and I think we're coming on a break in a minute, but we can start the conversation.
Well, another great question. We don't really know exactly how people look at us in this country. I can say that he was regarded as a very influential, powerful leader in this country. I think he's very famous for civil rights and the Voting Rights Act and getting that through. And I think other people in different countries do look up to him. Gandhi, for example, was one of his mentors. I think he did meet him in person, and I think that his influence is worldwide, and they do reference things that he's done. I mean, this is a man who won a Grammy for Best Spoken Word posthumously, in 1970 for Why I Opposed the Vietnam War. He also won. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, right, for nonviolent struggle for civil rights. I mean, he just accomplished so much in his life for things that he did that were nonviolent. Whereas when you mentioned before, we met with Malcolm X. But Malcolm X's motto is "by any means necessary," and I don't think Dr. Martin Luther King had the same mindset. Maybe just by what is only necessary, but they each had the same end goal was to level the playing field. Everyone has a right to vote. In our Constitution says all men are created equal. I think that there's something to that, and he really wanted to see it lived out. Now his life was cut short, but his message is too powerful to kill, and it's just going to live on and on and on and on, and it's going to really the effect has been just multi-generational, and it will continue.
Thank you. I think we're time for a break, right, James?
Yeah, we got to take a station break, but this is so powerful. This is something that need to be heard, and that need to not just be heard on Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, but we have to stand together. We have to live together. We have to believe in each other. We have to get rid of the prejudice. We have to get rid of the hate. We must learn to understand it's not about the color of your skin. It's about the character that you have. We all got character. Some of us got bad character. Some of us got good character. My focus is on having great character. We're going to take a station break, and we're going to come back and we're going to pick it up. Yes, your life with Z Show after break. Went on to graduate from college at the age of 19, and he completed his master's in divinity at the age of 21. He was accepted into Boston University, Koza Theology Seminary in Pennsylvania, where he pursued and completed his doctorate in 1955 at the age of 26 years of age. There where he met his wife, Coretta Scott, and they had 2 boys and 2 girls. In December 1955, he accepted the leadership of the first great Negro nonviolence demonstration of contemporary times in the United States during the bus boycott. I think many of us remember that, where it lasted for 382 days until the Supreme Court stepped in and passed the segregation law that says that regardless of race, creed, or color, that everybody was created equal. Some of his major milestones that he accomplished in life, as I mentioned, 1955, the Montgomery boycott. 1957, he was the founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. 1963, the Great March on Washington, D.C. 1964, he was very instrumental in making sure that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. He was the youngest person to ever win the Nobel Peace Prize at the age of 35 in 1964 as well. And he was very instrumental in 1965 Voting Rights Act. One of the things that I hope that we take away from this is this great man was a pioneer in everything that we are living by today as people of color, and not just people of color, but people around the world. It requires us to just reach out, learn to love, not hate, learn to not judge others just because of the color of their skin, their religion, their sexual orientation, but to all come together as one. So I want you all, again, to let's salute Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on his birthday today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, I think it's so important that we share these messages, and I know that was a long one right there. But as I mentioned, I did a documentary on this, making sure that what I think was being able to be talked about today. I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle. I think we got the better part of 5 minutes to go in the show.
Yes, thank you, James. Tim, so, Dr. King's vision, his legacy on equality is well known. What do you think, what would to keep this going, and what is hindering us, if anything?
Michelle, that last part of your question got muted out.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Dr. King's, his vision, his legacy on equality, how do we continue that in today's times? Like what else work do we have to do today?
Well, I think that if you extrapolate that, right, we've already said, beyond just color, but I think when any sort of difference prompts and promotes or tolerates hatred, we got a problem. And that's either color of skin, ideology, in any other way that we might differ from one another, right? And I go back to that quote that I used earlier, right? We got to figure this out. And I'm no expert to determine whether or not, the change has come yet. I don't think I have the I'm not the person to judge that. But I think that if we don't figure this out and we don't continue to work on this, and we let hatred come in any form due to any difference, then we're clearly not honoring what Dr. King called out, particularly when he said, in one of the great quotes, yet he's quoted a lot, right, named after Martin Luther and all the rest of it. But when you really break down some of the things that he said about God and what his feelings were about God, he was very clear. He said, God is physically present everywhere, right? But spiritually, he's only present when his spirit and his word are present. And, again, I go back to the hypocrisy of, tolerating things beyond color of our skin, race, sexual preference, ideology, political ideology, et cetera, et cetera. We got to figure this out and learn how to bridge what divides us and continue to do that. And there's more work to be done. And again, it's the, there's a difference between having a dream and acting on that dream, right? And I think that's where the work comes in. And I think I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who I go back years and years with, back to when we were teenagers. And he's a Catholic Monsignor. And he said, it's not easy living a Christian life and what you're called upon to do. And And I think Dr. King wasn't the only, but he was certainly one of a few that ultimately paid with his life for the difference of opinion. And we didn't even get time to go into J. Edgar Hoover and the files that they were maintaining on Martin Luther King and what a threat he was. We didn't get into Martin Luther King's conversations with the Kennedy administration and with Lyndon Johnson about posthumously from Kennedy's efforts to championship legislatively the Civil Rights Act and how the conversations that took place on President Johnson bringing that about. I think, look, we're perfectly imperfect as people, and I think we're going to continue to need to work on our flaws.
Thank you, Tim. We got about a minute and a half left. I'm just going to go around the room, just say one word about what Dr. King, about an adjective about Dr. King. Josh, one word about Dr. Martin Luther King.
Acceptance.
Dr. Bulluck.
Love.
Dr. Johnson.
Inspiration.
Tim.
Same. Inspiration.
Me. Champion. And
I'm
Jay.
gonna say compassion. Compassion, because I think that's so important. That if we're doing things, we have to have a passion. We have to be compassionate about it, and that's how we make change. That's how we make generation changes. Dr. Martin Luther King work years ago has caused or affect generation change, not only in the United States, not only in the community in the United States, but around the world. You know what? We are at the end of the show. I knew that me and Michelle chose the right panel again. I mean, there's certain people for certain panels that we go out and we handpick. I want to thank each and every last one of you for taking the time out to get a short notice to come on and talk about this great topic. I'd like to thank Michelle for putting together another absolutely fantastic show. Most importantly, I'd like to thank our viewers and our listeners for tuning in to the James Cooley Show, Is Your Life. And I'll tell you what, like Martin Luther King always said, you got to have big dreams. Always dream big, think big, and be big at everything that you do. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Is Your Life.